Traders, how are you? Marcello, founder of the Day Trading Academy, co-founder of Speed Up Trader. Today, we're going to be doing the recap of what happened in the markets last week. So overall, interesting week, quite volatile stock market. We got some news about not Tesla, but Elon Musk deciding to make a proposition to build tunnels in Miami and Fort Lauderdale, in addition to quite a bit of movement in the stock market. So let's go ahead and get started. Monday, the market was higher. We had the S&P 500 and the Dow making a record high. We are starting to have a lot of investors that are starting to worry about the interest rates. As you guys remember, I haven't done this video on the English side just yet, but remember that the U.S. government tried to issue a 7-year bond, a 7-year debt, and essentially no foreigners wanted it. So they had to jack up the interest rate to be able to have people want the debt. And this is going to turn into a very bad negative spiral very quickly, because if everybody knows the jig is up, right, and they don't want to borrow the U.S. money, then we have to lend ourselves money. So we have to create our own money to blend it to ourselves. And we're already in a situation where if the interest rates go up a little bit, we're going to need a lot more money and more debt to be able to pay the interest on the debt. And then after that, it's just a downward spiral. Now, Biden did talk about a potential interest rate increase, which would be the highest increase in taxes. I think I said it. Let me start that one over. There was news that Biden is planning the biggest tax increase since 1993. And essentially, that really doesn't matter because 80% of our budget right now is literally debt. So increasing the taxes really doesn't make any sense because 80% of our budget is literally just us taking out our own money. Does that make sense? So we're in the precipice right now of a very, very bad situation. Tuesday, the market is mixed with the upcoming Fed announcement on Wednesday. Wednesday, the market was higher after the Fed stated that they're going to keep the interest rates near zero, at least through 2023, even as we have upgraded forecasts for the economy in addition to inflation over the next several years. Thursday, market plunged, led by the NASDAQ, and went down 3.02%. And then Friday, the market was mixed. U.S. stocks overall lower for the week. The Dow went down 0.46%, with the S&P 500 dropping 0.77%. And the NASDAQ went down about 0.79. In overseas market news, the popular German DAX was positive. Biggest one of most positive, I should say, one of the week, 0.81% for the DAX. Istanbul market in Turkey was the biggest loser at 1.85%. And then Latin America and Canada, they were mixed as well, with Canada being positive, just 0.25%. Africa and the Middle East, generally lower. South Africa went down 3.48%. Asia and Australia was mixed. The Philippines was the biggest loser at 4.54%, with Singapore being the biggest winner at 1.27%. And Bitcoin, big news in Bitcoin this week. We had a huge drop from about 62,000, near the record high, all the way down to 56,000. And this was because it's reported now that India is proposing actually banning all cryptocurrencies in India. And this is something that I kind of talked about before, where this is the risk when it comes to Bitcoin. Not that it can't go up, not that it can't make record highs, because, I still expect it to go up and down and continue to make record highs. But, from one day to the next, we might have a situation where the biggest kind of governments in the world just decide, well, it's just going to be illegal now. You can't own it. And while it is decentralized and people in Argentina and Pakistan and Nigeria will still own it, they can definitely shut that down pretty quickly. Obviously, this is just India, right? Nobody else has done it. But one of the interesting things that has actually happened is we have a situation where the European Central Bank registered the digital euro as a trademark. And that's what I think is going to ultimately happen, where we're going to have government coin. We're going to have the digital dollar and the euro. So it's really interesting that happened this week. Overall for the week, so far, we've only had 18.6 million Bitcoins that are in circulations. Remember that the cap for Bitcoin, they state, is 21 million. Overall for the week, it went up 2.9% from roughly just under 56,700 to just over 58,300 for the week. It's still up over 101% for 2021. In commodities, oil futures are up this week, they're down this week. U.S. crude was down 6.82% to $61 $60.42. International Brent went down 7.26% to $64.53. It is still up, however, 70% since the election. I'm sure all of you guys are feeling that in your pocket. This is the biggest increase since an election in the modern era. Three main things, the reason why oil's going up. So I had some of you guys ask me in the comments. China now is starting to import a record amount of Iran crude. So remember that we had the restrictions on Iran to be able to have them blocked from selling their crude. Now we have that crude coming back online since Biden is a little bit more lax in regards to those restrictions. And so we have more supply, right? More product on the market, which means that the demand hasn't really spiked as they expected because we have some world vaccination programs have stalled. So we have this huge flood of supply. The demand doesn't go up with the supply. So obviously that's going to drop the price because obviously there's only a certain amount of people who want the oil, right? If there's more flooded on the market, it makes it less appealing, let's say, to some people. And that's why we had that big drop. In addition to that, we also had the dollar strength. Remember that most commodities in the world are priced in dollars, even though we do have new markets now for oil in places like Dubai, and if I'm not mistaken, Singapore as well. It's still mainly in US dollars. Gold and silver prices are up this week. We had a lot of short-term traders cover their shorts. This is kind of similar to what happened with GameStop in terms of the short squeeze. But essentially, we have a lot more tensions now happening between Russia, the United States, and also Russia. And that also is affecting the situation with the precious metals market because obviously people invest in precious metals when there's uncertainty in the market, let's say. Precious metals for the week, gold is up 1.03%. It went to 1,745, while silver is up 1.22%. It went up to 26.35. Financial and banking news, U.S. Treasury Secretary, I got stuck there for a second. U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen is stating that she doesn't think inflation is going to pose a significant risk now that the $1.9 trillion stimulus, which equates to about 8% of the GDP of the United States, is out and it hasn't really caused any inflation. There's a lot of analysts that are saying that it's going to provide an unprecedented inflationary risk. I remember there were some chips that I was buying and the price of the chips went up by 20%. And then there's also this other meat that I was buying at the store and the price of the meat went up by 16%. So don't listen to what they tell you about what the actual inflation rate is because they don't include things like food prices, right? Or oil prices in their quote unquote index. And there's other indexes that you can look out there. That's why I always tell you guys, don't pay attention to the news outside of the fact that it's all political and negative all the time, right? Pay attention to what people do, not what they say. And if you go to the store and you can see even at Costco, for example, I remember somebody telling me that there was a price of a product that was being measured by volume, right? By ounces or by grams rather than just a fixed price. They're doing that on purpose because they don't want it to seem that the prices are going up. Lumber prices are up. Oil is up, which is going to reverberate through the entire economy because we ship all of our products with oil. Inflation is definitely coming, and it's going to get even worse when the interest rates start to creep up, as I mentioned in the beginning, because once they creep up, the interest on the debt that we have is going to continue to increase. And now that most foreigners don't want to lend us money anymore because we've abused that position for so long, that's going to cause quite a bit of inflation, if not, hopefully not, hyperinflation, but I do think that's coming as well. So look to, for example, Argentina right now, or, further down the line, what's happened to Venezuela or even Zimbabwe. The 10-year Treasury yield has surged to a 14-month high to 1.75% on Thursday, despite reassurance from the Federal Reserve that they have no plans to increase interest rates. Remember, before the housing crash and the financial crisis in 2008 and 2009, the Ben Bernanke, the then Reserve Chairman, Ben Bernanke, he said, oh no, everything's fine. No. We expect everything to be great going forward. And then that's when the crisis hit. So they're never going to actually tell you the truth. Other than that, the Fed is also expecting core inflation to hit 2.2% this year. Remember that that's not the actual inflation rate. I think right now the actual inflation rate is between 15 to 20% or so. Remember last week I let you guys know that if you wanted to build a new house, you're going to add over $24,000 to the cost because the lumber has gone up. And in other news, the electric vehicles, the EVs, even though they're much better for the environment, they cut quite a bit in terms of government revenue. There's a state in Australia that's going to pass or look to passing, the state of Victoria, the first taxes on EVs. They want to tax 2.5 cents per kilometer, and also to a tax of 2 cents on plug-in hybrid vehicles as well. Now that's they are saying, expected to generate just over $23 million in the next 4 years. In political news, although the Democratic California communist governor Newsom from California, not California, but California, he's acknowledged that the campaign to recall him, to have the vote to recall him, is most likely going to have the 1.5 million valid signatures to hold the recall later this year. He's starting to attack the campaign organizers, saying that they're anti-immigrant, connected to far-right militias, and embrace the QAnon conspiracy theories. Anything to stay in power, isn't that right, buddy? But he's also saying that a lot of other people are saying that, people who are actually signing the petition, right? They're tired of California because their businesses are destroyed because of the lockdowns that he imposed. Dems in the House, the New York state legislator, in addition to both senators from New York, are calling for Cuomo to resign or be possibly impeached. President Biden was also asked about the accusations, saying that he wanted to see a full investigation, but if true, he does want him to leave if they prove to be true. In economic news, the global economic downturn caused by the shutdowns due to the COVID-19 has definitely affected quite a bit of people in terms of living standards and pushed millions of people out of the global middle class. In 2020, the World Bank said that they expected 2020 to have a growth rate of 2.5%, whereas there was actually a contraction of 4.3%, which is a turnaround of about 6.8%. The Americans filing new claims in this economic news went up as well. The expectation was 700,000 last week, or the prior week before this report, it was 725,000, and it's gone up now to 770,000 for the week ending the 13th of March. And the U.S. economy added 379,000 jobs in February, even though employment is actually 9.5 million jobs below the peak before the pandemic hit in March 2020. Even when that unemployment reached record lows for American labor groups, including African Americans and Hispanics. And the Fed is also saying that we should see an increase in the growth rate to 6.5% in 2021, even though that includes the actual stimulus that they're dishing out. Remember, $1.9 trillion, and I explained this to you in the previous weeks as well. The huge debt situation started under Bush due to the 2008-2009 crisis. If I remember the exact number, don't quote me on these numbers. I'm going to give you a ballpark. Just look them up on Google if you want to confirm them. Bush, in the 8 years that he was in office, Bush the younger added about 5.7 trillion or so in debt. Then Obama came in, and then in 8 years, he added more debt to the federal debt than all the previous presidents combined, including Bush younger. So he added, if I'm not mistaken, roughly, I believe it was close to 8 trillion, 7.7 trillion or so comes to mind. Then Trump in 4 years adds almost as much debt as Obama did in 8, right? So he added almost 7 trillion. Now we have a situation where Biden comes in, and literally within a month, 30 days, he adds in 1.9 trillion, and now he's talking about a $2 trillion infrastructure package. So we're now looking at 3.9 trillion literally in the first year of office. So the debt is literally just skyrocketing, going like that. Not going to end well, right? I've been talking about this for a while. A lot of other people have as well, but we haven't seen any kind of crisis or anything due to the fact that the government kind of keeps pushing it down the road. But eventually we have to pay the Pied Piper. Other than that, in corporate news, Tesla plunged 6.93%, mirroring the general sell-off in stocks. They were hit mostly due to the rising interest rates, and also competitors now like GM and Ford and others are starting to come in. The big boys are coming with the EV, so Tesla is now having some competition. They're down about 16.40% over the last month, 7% in 2021, but still up over 664% year over year. Shares in Facebook were up 4.12% on Friday, the largest one-day percentage gain since November, after CEO Zuckerberg stated that he's not too worried about the restrictions that Apple is starting to place on the phones. If you guys don't know, there's a bit of a battle between Apple and Facebook, where Apple says, no, you don't need everybody's blood sample to be able to log in on Facebook, right? You don't need to know what color their favorite color is and share it to everybody online. So even though Zuckerberg stated that he was, he's okay with it, there's not a problem, even though they're not getting people's blood types and preferences and all the personal information, their stock is still up quite a bit year over year. And technology, there's over 9 1,000 tons of space debris orbiting the Earth, including old satellites that aren't working anymore, and even rocket bodies that are literally orbiting the Earth. They just don't need to be there anymore. It's just garbage, basically. There's a new technology company developed by a company called Astroscale, which uses a magnetic docking plate to be able to latch on to space debris. They are going to launch that 175 kilogram technology on Saturday morning from Kazakhstan to be able to assure that we don't have a problem, because obviously we rely on these satellites for everything like weather forecasting. The International Space Station can get hit by one of these random objects, right? And we even rely on it for GPS. Google Maps, for example, if you guys didn't know, if you turn off your cell phone and you still have, if you had loaded the map, you'll still see yourself walking on the GPS because it's with a satellite rather than with a cell phone signal. Other than that, in investment news, higher interest rates are hurting growth stocks more than stocks overall. Part of the reason why is because the high growth stocks often need new capital to finance growth, and higher interest rates makes that more expensive. And secondly, they generate most of their free cash flow far into the future. We're talking about the Ubers and all these other companies, for example. They need that money to be able to grow now, but the profits and a lot of the money is on the back end. Look what happened with Amazon when they were in their hyper growth phase, which I'm not saying they're not growing now, but when they were in their hyper growth phase, they decided to just leave their prices the lowest that they could be to be able to break even and get market share. Once they have the market share, and they essentially control the market now, right? They can literally price their products whatever they want. See what I mean? So they needed the money to be able to grow and bid out the infrastructure in the future, but they were receiving the money or the profits, let's say, in the future, which is essentially now. Google is going to invest $7 billion, a lower amount than what was expected. Before, it was $10 billion in offices and also data centers across the United States in 2021. Everywhere from Nebraska, South Carolina, Texas, Atlanta, Chicago, New York, Washington. They're planning offices and also data centers. They're going to look to create up to 10,000 new full-time jobs as everybody's at home due to the pandemic, online using Google services. The UK government is now proposing a weakening of the Big Four auditors and placing more responsibility on the directors of the companies after the collapses of the retailers BHS and also the builder Carillon, however they say it there in England with the English accent. Other than that, it was a 4-month public consultation, and they're going to implement the bulk of the 3 government-backed reports, changing market competition, regulation, and also corporate governance. And local leaders in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, have been in talks with Elon Musk's boring company to be able to build a 2-mile tunnel from downtown all the way to the beach in Fort Lauderdale. Miami has also been in discussions with them as well. They're saying that the previously priced project at $1 billion should cost only $30 million and be completed in about 6 months or so. Remember the timing that Elon Musk gives, generally a little bit longer than he always says. In international events, substantial surges in both new coronavirus cases and hospitalizations in Europe and Brazil may be something that we unfortunately are going to have to face here in the U.S. in coming weeks and months ahead. So hopefully we get those vaccinations out so we can go back to normal, or you can just go to Florida where everything is normal and everything is great. At a meeting in Moscow, a senior Afghan official says that the ruling government and insurgency in Taliban have agreed to try to accelerate talks aimed at ending the decades of war in the country of Afghanistan. In New South Wales, in rural communities in Australia, they are having an apocalyptic mouse infestation that are eating absolutely everything. The mice even go on to eat the legs of pigs. They just devour everything. It's not kind of a one-off thing. It happens actually every 4 years, but they're having an unusually higher number of them this year due to the heavy summer rains across East Australia after many years of drought. U.S. Chinese officials concluded talks in Alaska with the United States on Friday. The meetings didn't go well. There were some insults there that didn't make the U.S. look good at all either. Now the tensions between the 2 largest economies in the world are at a fever pitch, and the relations are down to the lowest level in decades. So it doesn't look like supposedly that those relations can actually be reset due to the bitter rivalry that we have at the moment with them. And in unusual facts this week, a group of first-year analysts at Goldman Sachs are saying that they're working 95 hours a week and only getting 5 hours of sleep. The employees are pleading the company to cut the hours down to 80 hours a week. And they're saying that if they don't, they're probably going to leave the Goldman Sachs workforce within 6 months. A 43-year-old rapper, Kanye West, is the richest African American in the United States at $6.6 billion. He officially became a billionaire in 2020. Now he's the richest African American in all of the United States. The vast majority of the wealth come from two partnerships, one with Adidas for his Yeezy sneakers, another one with the apparel company Gap. $3.2 billion for Yeezys, $4.7 billion for the Gap, and he also owns about $1.7 billion for a major share in Kim Kardashian's Skims shapewear line. And as I told you guys last week, I'm going to share a lot more of the natural disasters that are happening around the world because they're not really making it on the mainstream news. There was 40,000 earthquakes in Iceland. After that, now a volcano's going off near the capital of Reykjavik. We also have a situation where there was a sandstorm that covered all of Mongolia in addition to the capital, not the capital, but the city of Beijing in China. So much sand that it literally blocked out the sun, and there's 10 killed and 80 missing after that sandstorm. And then I told you guys as well about the mouse apocalypse there in Australia. That's the news for this week, guys. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you next week.